William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I welcome you to another Two Hats special of community events. Let's look in and see what's really happening.
We are? I'm sorry. So welcome, everyone. We are so excited to move into our new museum when we won't have a column in the middle. Hopefully you can all hear me now. I am Pat Higgins. I'm the President and CEO of the Dallas Holocaust Museum Center for Education and Tolerance. And hopefully you saw across the street our new museum, which will be the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum. And we will open to the public on September 18th of this year. So it will be here before we know it. And we're really excited to have more space. If you haven't visited our current museum, it's wonderful, but it's tiny. This entire museum is 6,000 square feet. And we hope that by teaching the history of the Holocaust, that we are encouraging people to think about their responsibility to stand up against prejudice, hatred, and indifference, and we're encouraging upstander behavior. But in the new museum, we will move forward in time and cover other historical content that will help people understand why the Holocaust is still so relevant, but also introduce them to other issues of prejudice and hatred. And part of the discussion in our American Ideals Gallery will be the LGBTQ struggle to have equal rights in our country. So in this new museum, we will have a rich content of the Holocaust. We'll start there because that's how we were formed in 1984 by 125 Holocaust survivors who made their homes in Dallas. And their mission was to honor their loved ones, but to ensure that something like the Holocaust could never happen again. And over the decades, our mission has evolved to help people think about their responsibility to stand up to prejudice and hatred here at home. So in that exhibit, we'll move from the Holocaust through a bridge, a human rights wing, that looks at representation justice at the International Military Tribunal that happened after World War II, the creation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which established 29 rights that all humans should enjoy: the right to love who you want to love, the right to marry who you want to marry, and the Convention for the Prevention and Punishment of the Crimes of Genocide. Then we'll have a gallery that studies the 10 stages of genocide. So our visitors will understand when we're at risk of letting another genocide occur. And lastly, we will pivot to America. And the construct for that gallery is called American Ideals, American Reality, American Repair. The ideals of it, all men are created equal. The reality is that, at least for centuries, it was white Protestant landholder men, not women, not all men. And so we will introduce our visitors to the evolution of civil and human rights for 12 different categories of American citizens. One will be LGBTQ. There will be rights of people with disabilities, children's rights, women's rights, African American rights. We'll explore slavery, both African American slavery up through the Civil War, and then jump forward and look at current human trafficking and slavery issues. Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, American Indians. We'll look at religious liberty. We'll look at rights of the incarcerated and immigrant rights. So everyone that walks through our museum will see some part of their history and their family's history represented. And at the very end, we will have a call to action. And we will say to our visitors, throughout this exhibit, we have introduced you to upstanders who have fought for change, who have saved lives, who have fought for their own dignity, and who have fought for others. And now we challenge you to get involved, to sign up with a nonprofit, to start volunteering, like those of you that volunteer for HRC, to make a difference in your community. And there are a lot of other wonderful parts of the new museum. There's a holographic testimony experience with survivors. So after our Holocaust survivors are gone, you'll still have the opportunity to learn from them. And we'll have rotating special exhibitions. And programs. And so if you're not a member of this museum, check us out. We'd love for you to become a charter member. We'd love for you to come to our Upstander Speaker Series or our Civil Discourse Series. But most importantly, we hope to be a convener in our community. We hope to be a place where groups like yours can come and have a conversation and feel like this is a safe place. And we're just honored to have you here tonight, and I'm so excited to hear this panel discussion. So thanks for being here, and please stay connected with us.
Thank you so much. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining Transcendence International and the Human Rights Campaign for this evening's panel discussion. Tonight we will be highlighting the importance of transgender visibility, especially at this time in our history, and why transgender men seem to be invisible in our community and society. It is also an opportunity to celebrate trans people as well as recognize the discrimination we face. As protections have slowly been put into place across 21 states and in Washington, D.C., the visibility of transgender people is increasing every day. However, due to the lack of protections at the local, state, and federal level, transgender people continue to face severe poverty, discrimination, stigma, and systemic inequality. I am no stranger to the hate and violence towards the transgender community. At the young age of 13, I struggled to find my true identity. In fact, I believed I was gay. After much introspection, I woke up one morning and decided that it was time to come out of the closet. That day, during my 4th period, I told several classmates that I was gay. However, before class was even over, it seemed like the entire school knew. As the day progressed, I was insulted, harassed, and even punched by several classmates. During passing period, people would call me names. When I got to class, people would refuse to sit to, quote-unquote, the fag. I couldn't wait to get home and get away from the bullying. During the last class of the day, I sat anxiously waiting for the bell to ring. As soon as it did, I headed towards the front of the school to meet with my sister Natalie. As I was walking to the exit, I could see her and hear as I was walking towards the exit, I could see and hear other students talking and giggling. Once I exited the building, I witnessed what felt like the entire school awaiting my departure. Everyone pushed me and turned their attention towards me. In those few seconds of silence, you could hear a pin drop. I had this feeling that something terrible was about to happen. My heart dropped and my stomach felt empty. As I walked to find my sister, a guy yelled out, "Faggot." Then another person yelled, "You're gay." Everyone either laughed or joined in on calling me names, and then people started to push me around. If I were pushed near someone, they would push me away from them as if I was some sort of disgusting piece of garbage. I was terrified but quickly became angry. I shouted to them to stop and I tried to defend myself, but it didn't seem to faze anyone. They just started to hit me harder, punch me, and even kick me till I fell to the ground. Eventually, I was able to get away and find my sister. I told her not to mention a word to my mom because I hadn't come out to her yet. The next day, I got called into the office to be asked why students were saying I was gay. Not once was my safety a concern. Consequently, the bullying and the violence continued, and the school did nothing to help me. I eventually ended up moving different schools. However, no matter where I went, the bullying and violence followed me. Because of this, I dropped out of high school at the age of 16. While watching videos online one day, I came across the interview of Jazz Jennings and her family with Barbara Walters on 2020. And almost immediately, I told myself, I'm not gay. I'm actually transgender. And that was the day that almost immediately I realized I was transgender. After searching the web, I learned more about my gender identity than I ever did in school or anywhere else, and about my sexuality. None of that was taught to me in school. This was the beginning to my path to womanhood. I could finally give a voice to my real identity. I figured, since I had previously come out as gay, that my family and friends would embrace me. However, that was not the case. Due to the lack of knowledge and education in our society, my family and friends had a tough time understanding what it meant to be transgender. I was bullied in grade school for not conforming to the norms of society. Not allowed to use a restroom that matched my gender identity in college. Almost murdered. Fired from a job. Denied health care most recently for being transgender. I don't want anyone else to have to go through what I had to go through. However, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done at the local, state, and national levels. In order to advance protections for all, we must come together as one community. We must stop fighting and marginalizing each other. It is time that we unite and fight for a world where lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people are ensured equality and embraced as full members of society. United, we stand. Divided, we fall. I would like to thank Transcendence International and the Human Rights Campaign for allowing me to speak and moderate this evening's panel discussion. I'd like to talk a little bit about Transcendence and what they do. Transcendence International is a support group open to those who identify as transgender, those who are thinking about questions, those who have questions about their gender, and those who support the transgender community. They set up and facilitate support groups around the world. They recently expanded to Australia. They offer youth and young adult support group meetings and work with mental health professionals to provide the most comprehensive help possible. They offer education to the community and work to partner with organizations. Over the years, Transcendence International has organized and participated in several panel discussions and workshops around the DFW area. The Human Rights Campaign and DFW fights for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer equality. They take a stand to combat discrimination by attending rallies, writing letters and postcards to representatives, showing up to lobby days, and to share our stories, and working hard to get pro-equality candidates elected. They actively work to build partnerships with organizations, including local businesses and nonprofits. They also help to serve coalitions and hope to reach diverse range of LGBTQ individuals. Transcendence International has graciously invited the Human Rights Campaign to co-host this evening's panel discussion. And at this time, I would like to open it up for our panelists so they can introduce themselves, and then we can open up the floor to everyone who has questions. So I'd like to hand over the microphone to Katie, and then we'll work our way down with Leslie, Fan, and Wolf, and we can all ask questions afterwards.
My name's Katie Sprinkle. I'm an attorney here in Dallas. I was born here in Dallas. I grew up in Irving, went to Irving High School, graduated college from the University of Texas at Dallas, and I attended law school at St. Mary's University down in San Antonio, earned my law degree in 1993. Back when, if you were writing down something that was on a piece of paper, yes, it was not in stone tablets for you young folks that had paper then, but only for a couple of years. I began practicing mainly criminal defense work. In 1997, I joined the Dallas County Public Defender's Office. where I stayed with them until the end of 2011. I moved to Marble Falls, Texas at the end of 2011 to help set up a new public defender's office there. After we got the office established, I returned to Dallas. While I was in Marble Falls, why I did it in a small rinky-dink town in Barnett County. Yes, I said Barnett. The rest of the human race would say Barnett, but it's Central Texas, so it's Barnett, as in burn it, darn it. That's actually how they taught me to say that. Because I said Barnett, and they said, no, it's burn it, as in burn it, darn it. That's okay, it's not Buchanan Dam, it's Buchanan Dam, but that's another conversation. But while I was there, I was already undergoing transition. I had begun hormones. I did my name change and gender marker correction in Austin. I changed my Facebook page, which ended up getting me outed. And much like high school, once one person knows in a small town, everybody knows in a small town. The county email system was used to send a screenshot of my Facebook page throughout the county to all county employees. That's how I came out in Barnett County. With the aid of the Barnett County IT department's email system. And it was done without my knowledge or consent, obviously. Welcome to small town America. I fortunately received a fairly decent welcoming. Most people by that point knew me and liked me. So there was only one individual, we'll say, who was being a bit difficult. But fortunately, for the most part, it didn't create any severe problems. But I wasn't going to give them the opportunity. Shortly thereafter, I returned to Dallas, started my own law practice. Part of that practice was to help people navigate getting their name and gender markers fixed. Because I was a lawyer. So when the time came to do mine, I thought, oh, I'll do what lawyers do. I'll go to the law library and figure out what the process is. I went to the law library and found absolutely no help. There was a lot of information on how to do it, but nothing made sense. There was a lot of conflicting information, so I decided, okay, somebody needs to kind of step up and figure this out, and so I sort of appointed myself and figured out how to do it, how to get it done here in Dallas. And since 2013, I've handled over 200 and plus a number of people who could not afford to hire a lawyer. I've helped them navigate the process so that they didn't run into what I ran into, which was, I don't know how to do this. And I was a lawyer, so I can only imagine what it's like for people who aren't. So that is my story. I will land this plane and let somebody else fly for a while.
Thank you. Should I want to add one thing is we got married back in September.
2 hours after we got married, I came down with the flu and was in bed with 102.8 degree fever.
She was such a trooper. My name is Leslie McMurray. I was born in Southern California, grew up in the LA area. I had a pretty normal childhood. I knew who I was at a very young age. Back when I was little, though, and this speaks to the importance of visibility. Because when I was a little kid, I was 5 years old in 1963. There was no Orange is the New Black. There was no Transcendence. As a matter of fact, the word transgender wasn't really coined until about 1972. So there wasn't the kid on the cover of National Geographic that I could point to and go, that's me, that's how I feel. There wasn't any Jazz Jennings, there was no movies, there was nobody. So the only word, since transgender didn't exist, all I knew was how I felt. And the only word that I could come up with for how I felt was freak. Because nobody else that I knew felt the way that I felt. I didn't have any friends that felt like I felt. There was none of my parents' friends, there was nobody that I could contact that I ever came across that felt like they were the other gender. So I didn't understand why I felt the way I did, I just knew I did. And so I did the best I could to be a trooper and live life the way society wanted me to live. And I went out and did all the things that someone would do, with a few exceptions, but I ended up getting married. I had a couple of kids. Both my daughters live in Atlanta now, and they're tremendously supportive and wonderful. I work in the radio industry, and it's kind of weird for someone who's kind of an introvert to be on the radio, but it's cool because you can create this persona. I'm fond of saying I hid behind the microphone for 30 years, because I was one of those smart alecky morning show DJs. It was plowing around telling jokes and having fun, but when you have control, complete control of the conversation, when it begins, when it ends, who gets on the air, who doesn't get on the air, it's a pretty awesome feeling because the conversation never goes to an area that I don't want to talk about, ever. And you go, well, I want to talk about? Next call, sorry, bad connection. So it was really a neat place for me to be. It was my safe place, my safe time. And it was only until later, after I had transitioned, come out and got really introspective, because people had asked me about, especially being on the radio and being in different cities, you're kind of a minor celebrity. And they would say, oh, you must have a lot of friends. It's like, no, don't have a lot of friends. I got a lot of acquaintances. And they would say, well, what's the difference? And my smart-alecky answer was, my friends don't ask me for concert tickets. Because everybody's always, it's like I poop concert tickets or something. That's not how it works. But the way I would describe things is that my circle of people was me in the middle, and then my family in that second ring, and close friends in the third ring, and acquaintances in the fourth ring, and everybody else in the fifth ring. But only later did I realize that my family should be in that center ring with me. But nobody besides me was in that center ring because I had a secret. So I had guarded conversations with everybody in my life. And so the importance of being out and visible is to tell the young trans kids, this is, we can be successful, we can be attorneys and airline pilots and air traffic controllers and doctors and any profession you can think of, we can occupy those things. And there's possibility out there, there's hope out there. Because too often trans kids lose hope and then they end up oftentimes taking their own lives or trying to take their own lives, and we need to make sure that they never reach that point of losing hope. So I came to Dallas back in 2011. I was hired by CBS to come out here and program a couple radio stations. Well, one radio station, and be the voice of KRLD, the news station, if you're familiar with that. Try to get over on the 8s. News Radio 20, KRLD. Is that you? That was me. Really? Oh, yeah. When spring storms hit North Texas. Oh, yeah. Do that all day. I hate doing that. I hate that voice. And it's funny, too, because it's a love-hate thing, because I used it for a lot of years to make a bunch of money, and now I hate it because I go through a drive-thru and they go, thank you, sir, please pull forward to the second window. I was like, so I don't go through drive-thrus. That's not a problem. But if we do, I drive. Skip the drive-thrus, lose a few pounds, it's a win-win. So I was married, but my ex was just absolutely dead set sure I was cheating on her. She knew there was another woman, and I denied it. And I said, there's not. And so it came to a head in the summer of 2012, and she came to my office in the CBS building. She threatened to cause a big scene unless I told the truth. And I said, tell me the truth. I said, what do you want to do, take a lie detector? And she goes, yeah, I want you to take a lie detector. It's like, okay. So she booked one for the next day, which would be my birthday. Happy birthday, here's your polygraph. So she calmed down and went home because she was happy because she was going to get the answer she wanted, and I was happy because she left. But I was also happy because I had nothing to hide. I wasn't cheating on her. So I'm driving home and I'm kind of whistling zippity-doo on, thinking, what can they possibly ask me that I would have a problem answering? And I said, nothing, except that. And so I thought, how are you going to answer the question? I said, I'm going to tell the truth. They ask me that question, I will tell them straight up, and that's how she'll find out. So I get home, and I lived in Flower Mound at the time. I had this really nice, beautiful house there on 8.5 acres, and it was just kind of this place of refuge. So I got home, she met me at the door, and she goes, I canceled the polygraph. And I said, I'm glad. And she said, but I still know you're hiding something. And so I went outside, and I took a glass of wine, and I sat out by this fire pit that we had for like an hour. And it was middle of July, so it was hot, but it was really calm, and it was a beautiful evening. And it was really weird. I only remember later why, but I took a camera phone and I took 2 pictures. And I took pictures because it was so beautiful and so calm, and I knew it was going to be the last bit of calm, and I wanted to be able to go back and look at that and have a little portable calm with me. And I went back in and I told her, I said, you're right, I have been hiding something, and if I don't tell you, it won't hurt you. It's not something that's going to come up and bite you. I'll take it to my grave. But if I do tell you, it'll change everything, and I can never untell you. And she said, I want to know. And so I told her. And her initial reaction was, oh, is that all it is? I figured that for a long time. It's like, well, yep, that's all it is. So she was okay with it. And then she started doing some reading and started seeing what was going to happen to her husband. And got on a plane, flew to California, and never came back. And so I was referred to this attorney, Katie Sprinkle, to handle my divorce, and she probably handed me off to someone else and made me get her headache. And they have never forgiven her to this day.
Didn't go to law school because I was stupid.
So anyway, it went on there, but once I came out, the day I came out of work is the day I lost my job and my career. I didn't realize it at the time, but when you apply for a job in radio, you send out audition tapes, and it's just samples of your air work. Well, all of my air work is under his name. So if I send out this guy, that's who they're going to expect. And that guy has a really good reputation, a great success, and track record coast to coast. But if I show up, they're going to go, wait a minute. If I send that out under my name, nobody's ever heard of me. Never worked at a radio station. So it pretty much created the career just right then and there. So I kind of reinvented myself. I'm now the Transgender Education and Advocacy Coordinator for Resource Center here in Dallas. I've been to Austin like twice in the last 11 or 12 days to talk to legislators about different bills. And if you all have any questions about what's being made through the legislature or the prospects of certain bills, I'd be happy to discuss those with you to the best of my knowledge. We go out and talk to businesses, corporations, schools, law enforcement, you name it, train people on how to deal with the LGBT community and do it in a way that offers dignity. Same with medical schools. I spent a lot of time over at UT Southwestern, Texas Women's, UNT School of Pharmacy, and trying to train the next generation of doctors. And before I hand it off to Finn, I just want to mention, I came from Northern California most recently. And there was a person who was a hero to me, a guy by the name of Harvey Milk, who was a supervisor in the city of San Francisco. And back in 1978, they had the Briggs Initiative, which was Proposition 6, which would have made it illegal for gay teachers or anyone gay to work in a school around kids, because this guy Briggs and others were positioning gay people as being a danger to kids. And that's just not true. And Harvey Milk saw that right away, and he was one of the biggest opponents of the Briggs Initiative. And he said, you have to come out, and he's talking to the gay and lesbian community. You have to come out, you have to be seen, you have to let people see you and know that you're not a threat to kids. And the same thing now applies to us, is we have to come out. And I know for a lot of us, we want to live stealth lives, and we don't want to be, flying the transgender, flying all the time, but it's really important that we be this bold and live our lives and be out where people can see us, because if this was 1943, a lot of us in this room would be on those trains.
And just real briefly, you look at these pictures here, and you understand that this museum was set up by survivors. You're going to go out on a limb and say one of the main motivations for them to do that was so that we wouldn't have to go through what they did. And for those of us who are out and visible, as difficult as that has made life, and we've all got stories, I guarantee you. They may be in different places at different times, but we've all got stories where bad things have happened to us. But by the fact that we're standing there, and now we're standing here, the hope is that younger kids aren't going to go through what we went through. Just like what these folks on the wall here hoped would happen. That none of us would have to go through what they went through. So we're all here to do one thing, make sure that the next generation and the generation after that don't have to go through what we have gone through. Sorry, Ben. No worries. Thank you.
So my name is Ben Jones, and thank you, Katie and Leslie. I don't know how I can top them. But, so I am the co-founder and executive director of Transcendence International, and I would like to also recognize my wife, the other founder of Transcendence International right there, and our board president, and Larissa Baxter, Bishop McMurray, who is our Dallas director. So a little bit of my story. I was born in Austin, Texas, and my family moved here when I was 10 or 11. But so yeah, my parents are actually part of the group that founded Higgins Hollow, and then so yeah, so I'm like considered royalty in Austin, which is hysterical. But so and it's actually funny because I'm bashful. I'm like clothes. I went clothes. Anyway. So, I was probably traumatized as a child. But anyway, so I was born in Austin, and I went to elementary school in Austin. And first, I was a really small child. I was very, very, very quiet. I'm actually an introvert. Most people don't believe that, but I am. And I always have been since I was little. But I was also very socially awkward. I actually had a nervous condition that we found out later on that I inherited from my great-grandmother. That when I got nervous, I just trembled and shook and trembled and shook, and then I got picked on because of it. So I was picked on and bullied and beaten up in every single school I went to, all the way through high school, even when we moved. I don't know why. To this day, we don't know why. I think it was because I was quiet. I was a teacher's pet, right? If you're the kid who's being bullied, you get to know the teachers really well, so they'll protect you, right? So I went through that as a child, and I'm talking about being bullied, at least beaten up once a week in school, people calling my house, leaving death threats, on our voicemails, this was before an email and all of that, so they would send letters to my house, threatening my life. My parents would change the schools. I would go to another school, and I would get bullied there. And I was not a bad kid. I never did anything wrong. So, but because I was bullied and all of that, the mental stress that I was going through, my parents were sort of supportive. But I got into drugs and alcohol when I graduated high school because of all the trauma that I went through. Became an alcoholic, had to drop out of college, went to college for music education, and actually lived on the streets in Cedar Springs for about a year. Just working in bars as a bar back or a bartender or whatever they would hire me to do. Lived in my car. I would live behind buildings. And about the time I was 25, I was like, this isn't a life. I can't do this anymore. So I joined the military. So I joined the Coast Guard. And my buddy Aiden back there, who's another Coastie. So I joined the Coast Guard, became an emergency medical technician, and I did search and rescue. So I did 8 years in the Coast Guard, 4 years active, 4 years in active duty. So honorably discharged, made it through. I'm actually a disabled veteran, so I have access to military, the VA care, but that's a whole other topic. As a trans person. So when I got out of the military, and I got out of the military because I was in during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So I came out as a lesbian at 17 because we didn't know what I had never even heard of transgender when I was growing up. I had no idea. Came out as a lesbian at 17, and in the 80s and the early 90s, I mean, you came out, but that's just kind of peeking out of the closet, right? You didn't really tell people. You just kind of went, oh, there's somebody walking by the closet. Okay, I'm gay. They look friendly. Okay. And I say this all the time. You literally become a professional liar. You really become a professional liar. You know what to say to who and when to say it. And so you're constantly changing pronouns and you're changing genders. Oh, well, I'm dating a woman, but I have to say it's a man, right? Your family's coming to the house. You got to take all the pictures down. Change all the pictures. I mean, I actually lived that way. And so when I got out of the military, I was actually investigating the military once for a witch hunt as a lesbian. And because I was such a good coastie, my captain actually shut it down. As soon as it hit his desk, he shut it down. Because I had already won medals, I had already won, all of that. And he said, this is ridiculous. So thank God he shut it down. But when I got out of the military, that's when I said, I will never, ever, ever hide again. Ever. I don't care what year it is. I don't care where I live. I don't give a damn anymore. I will never, ever lie again. So I moved from Corpus back to Austin. Lived in Austin for about 8 years, and I was an out lesbian there. But I was an introvert, so I didn't have a lot of social friends. I wasn't a part of a big social group. Still lesbian, and I can tell you that my entire time, from the time I came out as a lesbian at 17 years old till the time I started transitioning from female to male at 42, I never, ever knowingly met another transgender person. Ever. When they say LGBTQ, that is only for social and equality justice. It has nothing to do with community. And I can tell you that because I work in this community. So it's getting better, but back then, oh no. Trans people literally, they didn't come to the bars. I mean, I've worked on the strip. I never knowingly met another trans person, unless they were a drag queen and you didn't know they were trans. They were a drag queen, right? They just didn't tell you that they were trans. So I started my transition at 42. I actually met Susan, my wife, about a year before, and we started dating. And she's the one who actually said, you know, have you ever thought that you might be trans? Because she's a brainiac, right? She's working on her 3rd degree now. So she researched and researched. And the only transgender person that I met was my pastor at church that I actually helped hire at our church. He was the first transgender person that I ever actually had a conversation with. And that was at 40 years old, 38, 9 years old. And I realized really quickly that David and I had a lot in common. Like, our childhoods were similar, the way we thought was similar, the way we grew up. So I went, huh. So Susan said, well, I want you to start seeing therapists. And I went, you're right. I'm not telling my crap to strangers. And that's how I was, right? And so I started going to see a therapist, and it turned out the therapist that I saw had never even actually worked with another transgender person. So the two of us learned together. She said, if you're willing to work with me, I'm willing to work with you, and let's learn together so that we can help other people. And I said, absolutely, let's do it. So 9 months later, I started my hormones, which is the way you really should do it. I'm just saying that. So 9 months later, I started my hormones, and Susan and I are still together. But the reason that Transcendence was founded was because I, as a transgender person transitioning in this community, could find a little support, and most of the groups were social groups. There wasn't really support groups. I mean, there were some, but not really, sit in a circle and just talk. No, that's not for me. So the reason Transcendence started was because my wife. Because Susan had no support from anybody. Nobody. She would call spouses of transgender people, and they would never call her back. She would try and have conversations with them. They would never, ever just sit down and have a conversation with her. And then we started looking at the divorce rate for the trans community. And the children who were being taken away from parents, and the parents who were kicking their kids out on the street because they just didn't understand. And there was nothing out there helping them to learn, right, how to support each other. So that's how Transcendence started. We started a little group in Fort Worth out of Agape MCC, and when it first started, it was more transgender men and their spouses, and then we got more calls from parents, from trans women, from spouses of trans women, from the entire community, and we said, well, we're just going to learn. And the one thing that is unique and different about our organization is there is absolutely no exclusion whatsoever. If you look at many of the transgender support groups around the country, they're all exclusionary in some way. They don't allow spouses, or they allow spouses, but only if their transgender person is with them. It's crazy. They don't allow children. We actually started having childcare at our meetings because we wanted the entire family to be there, right? Because that's how you help support the entire family. You don't support one and hope that that person's going to go home and teach the other people. You've got to actually interact with all of them to help them learn how to support each other. So now, 2012 up to now we have 4 support groups in Texas. We have 2 in Oklahoma. One is an online support group in Enid, Oklahoma. And then we have Oklahoma City, which is run out of the Diversity Center of Oklahoma. And now we have New South Wales Transcendence International, which is like, wow. But Australia has absolutely no support whatsoever. We are actually the first transgender, trans-led organization to have anything in Australia at all. That is insane. That's crazy. But our new director, Chana Schulman, is actually an Israeli transgender woman who works for the American Embassy. And she's actually already talking with politicians about getting some funding for New South Wales, Australia, to be able to spread it all the way through Australia, which is incredible. So we're very excited. So anyway, but we built a model over the years, and with Larissa's help and Ginger's help and Katie's help and Leslie's help. I mean, Katie and Leslie are part of TCI, but they're part of our community, and they've helped. They've helped us. Leslie is an attorney and has helped us tremendously. Paula Ellis was our Dallas director. Now Ginger is our Dallas director. It takes an entire community to raise a village, right? It takes the entire community. You know, Transcendence, you see my face out there all the time, but that's because I'm a loudmouth. And I believe an introvert. Right. Well, not anymore. Tea does a wonderful thing, doesn't it?
So we're an hour in and we finally said hello.
I know. Anyway, so when I started, I will say a little bit about my transition though. Like Susan and I met in 2009. We are now legally married because of same-sex marriage, because we live in Texas. Even transgender people could not get married because my birth certificate still said female, so we would be considered a same-gender couple, right? So we were married in 2016. But when I transitioned, just a little bit about that. I struggled with my weight my entire life. I lost 13 pant sizes and 3 shirt sizes when I transitioned. And that is not working out, it's just the tea. And we believe that it's because this is what I was supposed to look like. This is what I was always supposed to look like. This is exactly what I was supposed to look like. But because I suffered from gender dysphoria and chromosomal things and blah, blah, whatever they're figuring out now, because now they're really doing some research into it, this is what I was always supposed to be like. So I also am a Trans 101 consultant in the Dallas area, an allied consultant. I do a lot of work with the medical community, just like Leslie. I helped get the trans wellness program started at AIDS Outreach Center in Tarrant County. So now a transgender person can go in and get mental health care, blood work, and see a nurse practitioner for free. And all you have to pay for is your HRT. And it's not dependent upon county like the Parkland Clinic. So anyone in the country can actually go to that. But last year, I actually ran for the House of Representatives. So I am actually the very first transgender person in Texas to win a legislative primary in the state of Texas. And I almost won. I lost by 8 points against a Tea Party Republican. That is saying something for our state, and it's saying that things are changing. I got no blowback from the community whatsoever. The only hateful email I got, believe it or not, was from a transgender woman.
And I said I was sorry about it.
She was a Trump supporter, right? I'm like,
no, that wasn't.
She's a Trump supporter. I didn't even bother to answer back. I'm like, you're a nut job. Oh, I was called a Nazi. I was called all that. I'm like, you need to go read some history. So anyway, I'm very, very, very proud to be the very first transgender person to do that. And I did that because of visibility. I never expected to win. I would have been like, I won? What? Especially against the Tea Party Republican in Arlington, y'all. I ran in Arlington. Arlington is white. It is white. But I did it so that I could get into spaces and be able to talk with people that I typically wouldn't be able to do that, right? So what I say is be brave. You know, I never ran for anything in my life. When Stonewall asked me to run, I was like, y'all are crazy. I'm going to piss some people off. And they were like, that's what we want you to do. So I did. I pissed some people off. But it got people's attention, right? It's the visibility. And I was in Austin on Monday, testifying against a bill, a harmful bill. So when you see our calls to action put out there on social media, please respond. Either go to Austin or that second, call your congressmen, your senators, and your your representatives. Literally all, because we had 13, 18 bills this session, and they're worse than the bathroom bills. Way worse than the bathroom bills.
There's also some good ones too, so
Yes.
support the ones that are good, and it's like, we don't want to turn this all into a negative thing.
Right.
If you find things, like there's HB 850, which is a beneficial bill, we'd love to see you supporting that. So if there's something you like, definitely voice your support. If you have a state senator or representative that's supporting things and voting in the way that you want, thank them for that. So encourage them to do things that we're looking for, as well as standing up and saying, hey, yeah, but we don't want this as well.
Yeah, there's a bill right now that will ban conversion therapy in Texas. So we're definitely supporting that. So, and I'm going to turn to my buddy Ari and thank them for coming in from Oklahoma. So, yeah.
I was a little worried the whole way down here that I didn't have talking points, so I was just gonna, extemporaneous. Sorry, it's a little scary, but I think I'm cool because it's almost bedtime. So like Finn said, I'm from Oklahoma. I would explain where I'm from, but the easiest way to say it is I'm halfway between Dallas and Oklahoma City, literally the middle of nowhere. Maybe Paula might be the only one that knows where Ardmore is. I drove down because Finn asked me to, but also because I think it's very important to talk about not just what people experience in Dallas or in Oklahoma City or in Tulsa, but what happens, when you are trans and out in Ardmore or, God forbid, Healdton, Oklahoma, because those are realities for some of us. If you think you never saw a trans person in Dallas or Austin, let me tell you a story. Until I was 24 years old, the only other LGBT anything person that I had ever met was a girl that I worked with at 1-800-Flowers who was a lesbian. Until I was 24 years old. I never knew anyone else who was openly any flavor of queer. Maybe that was my motivation to then become all of the LGBT letters at one point. That's the thing that happened. Sometimes more than one at once. Try it, it's fun. It's a thing. I didn't transition until a little bit later. I was 27 when I decided that I was just going to go for it. I was terrified. I was terrified of a lot of things. I was pretty sure that my parents were never going to talk to me again because I only saw them twice a year anyway. So that wasn't really a big deal. I was terrified that my kids would hate me and would never talk to me again. They're still cool with me back there, mostly because I pay for all the video games. Xbox credits coming your way, my dude. There were a lot of things, and the thing that never occurred to me were the things that actually did happen. I wasn't scared of losing my job. Why would I lose my job? I was good at my job. My job was not operated with my genitalia, oddly enough. So, I didn't see what the problem was. Lost the jobs anyway, several of them. To the point that one of my most recent bosses actually told me that the reason that I was stuck in crappy jobs was because I kept moving around to different jobs. And so, well, if people would quit firing me, I would stay. Weird. I don't want to have a job. I like food. I like lights. Lights are cool. So, thankfully I have a partner who has been supportive and let me do weird things like write for a very small newspaper, which I don't know if any of you know this, but journalists actually don't make any money, at all. I'm pretty sure I am still paying them to work there. Not sure how that works. I don't know how to turn the subscription off. I think, I literally had to pay for a subscription to the paper that I worked at to be able to do my job. That's real. But they gave me a key and a laptop, so it's cool. But, being trans in a small town, now it's fine because I have a beard. I go through the drive-thru, and sometimes I get mad. It depends on what's going on, but usually they're just we don't know. So they're just they just don't say anything. Customer service. But, a lot of times now people don't say anything. It was the interim that was the problem. And that's kind of the topic, I guess, of what brought us here is because people like me are invisible. True story. I was at training for one of the, I don't know, how many jobs have I had in the last 5 years, Kyle? 12? I mean, seriously, it has to be at least 10. Some of them simultaneously. Gotta do the hustle to keep the lights on. I was sitting at lunch with all of my coworkers in a training. It was right around the time that everyone on Facebook and the news and everyone else was talking about bathroom bills in Texas. One of the guys at the cool kids table, the other out gay person, because I was gay, but I wasn't telling anybody I was trans, because that's weird. One is safe in Norman, Oklahoma, and one is not. So we go with that one first. If you react well, maybe I'll tell you the other thing later. So we're sitting there, and he's like, dude, sometimes you can't even tell when trans people are trans. Look at this guy. And I kid you not, he pulls out his phone and shows everyone at the table a half-naked picture of Aiden Dowling.
Oh, God.
And I looked at him and I said, we don't all look like that, And he's like, what? I see my name is Ari, I'm trans. It's you. No! And then another girl at the table asked me what my girl name was going to be. No. Wait. We already did, no. We didn't like that name. And I'm not telling you what it is. So, there have been bad things. But to live in a town of 18, 19,000 people? I don't even know. I'm looking at you, Kyle, because you should know. 19-ish. Maybe 25, between 8 and 5, Monday through Friday, or whatever. To live in a town that small, where literally everyone in, the city government and the county government, they all know each other. And then to take the kind of job where now they all know me, that was terrifying. But I already did the scary part, I went to Hilton, Oklahoma, kind of in that midway limbo where people look at you and they're like, are you a really butch lesbian or are you a dude? It's a thing, and in Hilton, Oklahoma, it's not like a would I date you kind of look. It's a do I need to kick your ass kind of look. It's a thing. So I spent a year every single day talking to cops, talking to city, county government officials, the district attorney, that's a fun one. And they all know. Every single one of those people knows that they dealt with a transgender person every day. Sheriff knew. Every day. Every time you see me. Scary? Maybe a little. Sometimes when we corner you in a room and it's like, oh shit, it's today the day. No, they just wanted to make sure that I was making them sound smart in the newspaper. It's cool. But how many times do you get that opportunity? I could have chosen to not say a damn word. I didn't have to. Probably would have made things a lot easier. Probably would have made a few more friends. But, I really want friends like that. Because as soon as I make the face, you guys know, you know the face. As soon as I make the face, that's when we're done. I don't call that guy anymore. But the people who either made the face and then made the effort to get to know me a little bit better, or the people who didn't make the face, they now know how to deal with how to change the name at the water office, or what to do if you have to arrest or question someone who's trans, or how to address when somebody looks like me but their ID says their name is Elizabeth. It's not a fun thing to have to deal with, but having one person who's a loudmouth, who knows all the cops, who knows the DA, who talks to everybody all the time and won't let them forget that this is what trans looks like, might make a difference. Maybe it won't. Maybe they'll forget as soon as I walk out of the room, I don't know. But if I don't try, who knows, maybe we end up like Ashley, Oklahoma. If you haven't heard that one, I'll spell it for you so you can look it up. ACHILLE, Google it. Where, LGBT people are not just targeted, not just threatened, but actually attacked endlessly. And that's not going to happen where I grew up. That's not going to happen where my kids are growing up, where my grandparents live. Because guess what? Nana and Papa are 75 and they figured it out, so the rest of everybody else can get on the bus. Because this is already happening. It's done. You don't get a choice. Now what are we doing?
Thank you, Leslie, Katie, Finn, and Wolf, for introducing yourselves so candidly and so vulnerable, and being so honest about everything. We'd like to open up the floor now to anyone here who may have questions. There's a lot that's been talked about tonight. And of course, I assume a lot of us have questions. I have one myself, but I'd like to leave it up to the floor first to go ahead and anyone who has a question, please raise your hand, and we'll start taking questions. Over here.
Yeah, so I'm a music educator, which I know. So what can I do? I'm hearing I've never seen someone who's transgender. I don't know, what can I do? But at the same time, what can I do as a teacher to help? And, no, I'm not saying I'm not transgender, but what can I do in my school so my kids don't go through your situation? I don't know,
One thing that you can do is make it normal to ask about pronouns. And you can do that simply by putting pronouns in your email signature. You can offer stickers. Have a conversation the first day of class. These are the pronouns I use. If you have different pronouns, that's cool. And then make it okay for people to try it out.
Also, when I talk to teachers, I tell them, if there's anything that you can either wear, like a lanyard, or something you can put in your room, because kids look for those signs, right, to see if you're cool, to see if you're a geek, or you're a nerd, or you're an ally.
That works.
Which school district are you in?
So, what school district are you in?
Capella.
Okay, yeah, I live in Capel. Katie, I live in Capel.
Yeah.
DISC was a program called Out for Safe Schools, and we would love to see that spread to Capel. That is where teachers, counselors are trained in how to deal with LGBT kids, make them feel welcome, and like they were saying is, if you could just normalize it, because that's all trans kids want anyway, is just to blend in and be part of everybody else. So if you can normalize it, but one of the things that the teachers or counselors that have been through this training have is this rainbow lanyard, which is kind of like the I'm a safe zone for any of those kids. If they have a question or problem, someplace to go, someone to talk to, they know that that teacher or counselor has been through that training. And if you want to chat with me afterwards, I'd be more than happy to start the ball rolling there.
And remember that not everyone in the cis community knows our symbols. They don't know the equal symbol. They don't know what the transgender flag is. Oh, what country is that from? Africa. But we know what it is. And kids will learn, and they'll pick up on those little subtle symbols. So remember, just because we know what they are doesn't mean they know.
You know, it's an interesting thing. Right before we got married, we have a transgender pride flag that we use as our guest book when we got married, but we also fly one outside the house in Capel. And so right before we were getting married, we got a knock on the door. It was like 7 o'clock at night, and this young person said, I saw your flag, and I had to know who lived here. And I said, well, we live here. And they said, well, my name's Christina, and I identify as transgender. And I said, well, it's good to meet you, Christina. Leslie McMurrin, and I identify as transgender. And so she was just giggling, laughing. She just couldn't believe there was somebody like her that lived in Capel. And I told her, I said, if you're ever picked on or you're scared, you need someplace to go, this house is a safe space for you. I said, you knock on the door, I'll open it, you come inside, you will be cared for and taken care of, and you will be safe in here. And I think that part of this ability is flying that flag and saying, this is who we are. Because like Katie was saying, a lot of people don't recognize it. I'm sure they wonder what the heck that unique looking flag is. For those that know, though, they know that someone like them either supports or is living in that house.
Yeah, I will say, so I'm on like the diversity committee for OIC, and there's someone within the committee, I've done a lot, I advocated for, and so we got committee to talk to, I don't know, they actually want to invite me to talk to all the counselors, when all the lawyers talk to all the counselors, about how we can help LGBT.
Great. See me afterwards. I'd be happy to get in my car. We'll make the connection there. We're talking with Mayor Hunt and some of the city staff about getting SOGI protections into Capel as far as their city employees, and also there's little cracks in the dam that are showing, even in places like Capel where you wouldn't think it would be.
Yeah, we are actually, Transcendence is actually community partner with Keller ISD. I actually go and talk to their trans kids at their learning center. The counselors make appointments for me with the kids, with the parents' permission. I sign a waiver, and we have I have conversation. And they're actually having a conference this summer, a Rise Up conference, where I'm actually presenting at an ISD school board conference. And that's progress. That's huge progress. So we just got to keep that visibility, because we were visible at one of their meet and greets. Now we're invited to everything. So we took that leap of faith in Tarrant County of all places, and they are amazing. So, and if you're able to go to that conference this summer for Keller ISD, just look it up. There's going to be some wonderful workshops for teachers about the LGBTQ students and bullying programs.
Another question?
Yes, you said that you didn't have to come out, like you didn't have to tell people you were trans. I would imagine that in some ways for some trans men, but there are a lot of disadvantages to being trans male. Would you speak for especially the two who were masculine, talk about that a little bit?
So the first thing that immediately comes to mind, and I'm sure Finn and I know Aiden back there will also agree, is the fact that there's an appointment that we have to go to somewhere between every 1 and 5 years, or never for some of us. Kind of scary. And you have to sit in the women's clinic, and you have to be a dude looking like this with all the pregnant folks and their husbands or boyfriends or whatever, and they're looking at you like, what are you doing in here? And that's not fun. I mean, on top of it already not being a fun appointment for literally anyone ever. Nobody wants to go there, but I really don't want to go there. So that's one thing. The other thing is, everything's fun and cool until, like I said, you pull out your ID and the dude with the beard has a picture of a lady and his name is Elizabeth and it says F on there because it's really hard to get stuff changed and he works really fast, so sometimes you go from, you know, no facial hair at all to, like, I mean, it takes a while to get, like, this thing that I've been admiring down here, but, you know, like, hey, I've got, like, 4 hairs. I might get there by the time I'm, like, what, your age?
We'll just bring it.
We'll just cut this off. You know, I literally tried that with, like, putting it into, I tried. So, anyway, those are my things.
So yeah, Leslie and I did an article together a couple weeks ago in the Dallas Sports. I don't know if y'all read it. When I talked about my experience with the VA, and let me say this, I've been seeing the VA since 97, 98.
The Veterans Administration, for those not in the know.
All right.
The Veterans.
Oh, Veterans Administration, sorry.
I thought it was abbreviation for, you know, for Virginia.
I'm not going to Virginia. You couldn't pay me to go to Virginia. Anyway, so at the Veterans Affairs, health, I've been in that medical system since 1997 because I'm a disabled vet. So there's all these hoops you have to jump through. There's aid and tests. There's all this stuff you have to do. You have to do all these appointments, right? So I've been in their medical system since 1997. So, what, 2 years ago, Susan, 2 or 3 years ago, I finally said, okay, I'm going to change myself with the VA, get all this done. So I walk in and do that, did an appointment with the doctor, I'm seeing the doctor, and the doctor knows a little bit about trans, but not much. And so she knew enough to ask me, well, do you still have your female parts? And I said, yes. And she said, when was the last time you saw a doctor? I said, who the hell knows? I said, because it's a trans person, not a trans man, that's not the appointment you want to, like, you want alcohol before you go. So, so anyway, so she said, well, we need to make you an appointment. I said, fine, make me an appointment. And then it was, oh wait, we'll have to put you in the women's clinic. I said, yeah, that's where the doctors are. And she said, oh no, you're going to trigger some of the women there. And I'm like, trigger them? Trigger them how? What, I look like some rapist?
They're scary.
Right? They're so scary. So then she's like, well, give me some time and we'll figure it out. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? So I'm the same patient. All I've done is change my name and my gender, that's it. I am the same patient. And they won't see me in the women's clinic. What kind of freaking sense does that make? That makes no sense. I still have the same parts. Some of them are missing, thank God, but the other parts aren't, and I have to get those checked.
Mine are still under warranty.
Yeah, well, Peter voided my warranty. But anyway, but that's the nonsense that's happening. I was a patient in that clinic before I transitioned. Now it's a problem. Aiden, I'm sure, has the same problem. We all have the same problem. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense. But gynecological...
No men
Right.
on this point.
Right.
I'm like,
Well, where do I go?
Right. Gynecological care for the trans men community is, it doesn't exist. It does not exist. I did a study with some trans men a couple of years ago, and it was to help to get a gynecology clinic started through the Parkland Clinic, right? For trans men, specifically for trans men. So I sat at a table with some trans guys that I'd never even met for like 2 or 3 hours, and we just asked questions and we talked about, like, what would trigger you? So we're like, change the waiting room, get all girly stuff, make it gender neutral, you know, everything, make it gender neutral, right? But the scariest thing that these guys told me was that they had not seen a doctor in at least 10 years, one of the guys told me, and he will never go see a gynecologist because of the way he's treated, the way he's humiliated, and it just, the way they treat us, right? getting hysterectomy, as a transgender man, you're going to have problems with your insurance, right? Because they're going to come back and say, well, this is for females. Your insurance won't cover it because you're a male. There was an article this past week of a trans man in Minnesota or Minneapolis, I can't remember. This gentleman was on the operating table to get a hysterectomy. The hospital administration come in and stopped the surgery and said their religious belief in that hospital prevented them from completing that surgery. And he was on the operating table.
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if your physician has recommended a hysterectomy because you're trans or because you're like, I don't know, bleeding to death or something. If you have a legitimate medical issue, I mean, honestly, for trans people in general, if you have a cold, they'll try to say, well, we don't do trans healthcare.
It's not a trans cold.
They think it is. It's trans marriage, it's just trans everything. We have
In Oklahoma, we don't have a transgender radiology department.
Yeah, I have a transgender gallbladder out last year.
Can I just say something on the note of like being a trans man who passes 100% of the time in every situation? Some of my worst experiences actually happen in the trans community, which is sad because like the worst place to have infighting, right? Like we don't need to do this crap. But I've had trans and non-binary people accuse me of not being trans enough somehow, because I do pass 100% of the time, and I don't, like, there's some sort of way to be able to legitimize yourself as a trans human being within your own trans spaces, but it's definitely something, if you are a trans person on any part of the spectrum, and you're aware of how we engage with each other, that just because I happen to pass 100% of the time, or already happens to pass 100% of the time, doesn't eliminate my trans experience. In fact, it gives me a unique perspective on the trans experience for a lot of people who may not pass 100% of the time. It makes me a different ally because I've had a different experience in a lot of these spaces. And it was actually kind of sad. I lived in Dallas for about 6 months, and I actually stopped going to the trans support group I was going to because every time when I got criticized for passing, like it was supposed to get a tattoo on my forehead or like somehow make it so I wasn't passing 100% of the time. And that experience tends to be very unique to trans men. And the accusations of like not being trans enough, I actually have gay friends who, they don't sound gay, so their gay experience is not gay enough somehow. So it's just definitely something to be aware of if you're an ally of the community or if you're actually in the community, that just because somebody passes or has an easier time passing, it certainly will never eliminate their trans experience.
I would just say that those that are critical, it tells a lot more about them than it does about you.
No, for sure. Absolutely.
To me, the most telling thing is when we talk about transgender celebrities. Everybody wants to go to Caitlyn Jenner. And I was like, what about Chaz?
Right.
Chaz Bono. He's been out longer, but he's invisible.
That's nice.
Yeah, I actually read something today that was interesting. There's a gentleman out there, and I cannot remember his name, actually, but he has a website that's completely dedicated to the invisibility of transgender men. And it's fascinating if you go on there and read something. I'll try to remember it and put it out there on Facebook. But anyway, I read today that he actually did a search on Google. All he did was type in the word transgender. So all he typed in was the word transgender in images. 209 images of trans people, well, some trans, some cis, of people came up. Out of all of those 209, only, I think, 16 were trans men. All the rest, or no, what do you say, 23 were men, 16 of them were transgender men. All the rest, right? All the rest were women, right? Because it's, as we said in the article, it's a big deal in the media when a man transitions to a woman, right? That's a huge deal, and everybody's just going crazy. But if a woman transitions to a man, it's like, oh, okay, and it just goes on. But I think that's very telling to who this country is. This country is male-centric. We hear a lot, why would a man want to be a woman in America, right? And really, I mean, that's a valid question. But,
One more question.
oh, okay.
Like time for one more.
Okay.
Down on your knee.
Okay, we'll go ahead and take your question.
First, bit of info, invisibletamen.com. Just Google it.
Thank you. Ginger found it.
And,
What was it again?
InvisibleTeammen.com.
all one word. And the question is, if somebody says, I identify as blank, and you don't understand that word, like you said, this kid said that they're trigender.
Yeah.
What do you do?
heard that. Google it. I mean, that'd be a good place to start, or you can ask them how, to help me understand that. That's not something I've heard before. Because again, and I use this term a lot when I go out and speak, is in this country, we get along socially by taking each other's word for it, right? Because like if you tell me that Italian food is your favorite food, then I say, yeah, but I saw you out eating something there was like a Subway sandwich, so therefore that can't be your favorite food, and we get into this big argument over that. It's hard for us to communicate. If I say I'm a dog person and you say, yeah, but you live in an apartment with 2 cats, it's like, well, maybe dogs aren't allowed on the lease. If they were, I would have 6 of them, but they're not, so I don't. So we have to kind of take each other's word for it. And we do, and that's how society functions, that they say, hey, I really like to play golf. Great, let's go play golf sometime. They don't say, prove it to me that you play golf. But for some reason, when it comes to gender, they don't take our word for it. It's like, well, how can you feel this way? So I think if we just kind of treat gender as we treat everything else societally, I think we can get along a lot better. And I think if a kid comes up and says, hey, I'm trigender, it's fine to say, help me understand what that is.
And take every opportunity that comes your way to explain and answer questions for people. When I came out at the courthouse, these are people that had known me for 20 years, pre-transition. And, for a couple of weeks there, I was the talk of the courthouse. And then people would get me in a room, say, can you help me understand this? Or, I know somebody who think may be transgender, I don't fully understand it, and I took whatever time I needed to take to explain it to them. One of our judges, Judge Goldstein, the first time I was in front of her on a name and gender case, I ended up staying with her for almost 3 hours, just explaining things to her, letting her ask all the questions. And of course, they always say, okay, I'm so sorry if I ask you a stupid question. And it's the only stupid question is the one you don't ask. Because that's the other way that we make the next generation's path a little easier, by being willing to even answer the questions we don't really want to answer. To have to listen to the dumbest question that's just put in a way that they don't realize is kind of insulting. So you correct the way they ask the question, and then you answer the question. And by doing that, you become sort of a portal for them. Because it's hard to hate up close. It is so much easier to hate from a distance. But it is very, very hard when somebody's sitting right across from you, talking to you, to hate you. So,
Lieutenant Governor.
unless you're doing Lieutenant Governor, and, but that's a special gift. And if you ever wondered what it looked like if God had diarrhea, just look at a picture of Dan Patrick. But take the opportunity to Paxton's kidney's coming to pass. How do you really feel?
I think Ari has something.
So just take those opportunities because they will benefit us and future generations.
I just kind of add to that. A lot of us get asked, especially those of us who are out, and loud. A lot of us are asked things often, and I mean, I can't really speak for all of us, but I think all of us would pretty much, talk to a brick wall about, gender and whatever, if the brick wall asks us a question, right? I mean, yeah. But not everybody's like that, and not everybody's in a safe place to do that. So maybe ask, is it okay if I ask about that? Or, can we talk about that later, or something to that effect? Is there someone, that can talk to me about that? Or is there a resource you recommend or something along those lines? Because a lot of times, just taking that extra step to say, are you okay to talk about this? Is, what name, what pronouns do you want to use? Is that safe all the time? Things like that can literally be life or death for some of us, especially in, Podunk, USA.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Linda, I believe at our the first time we met, Linda actually provided me with a booklet that we can hand out to family members and our allies that HRC put together, and it goes in depth and it explains to you the terminology, different things that we don't normally hear. Because I believe that a lot of us up here today come from very different identities and we represent each other differently. And I think that would be a great resource for you to look up. You can simply Google it. I don't have the direct link right now, but we can get it to you. And that would be a great resource to share with your friends, family, coworkers, and look for other organizations like PFLAG and other organizations who are putting literature out there to help educate ourselves. And I think that's the best way that we can do that, is by educating ourselves and those who are not transgender, but are allies, to become a better ally. Learn the terminology and go out there, and when you hear someone say something, speak up and say, hey, that's wrong. This is how it's supposed to be said, and this is what we're supposed to be doing. And this is how to be an ally. So we need to make sure that we're not only saying, hey, I'm an ally, but let's make sure that we're learning the terminology to go out there and help educate our community. Because education is key to advancing equality. That's the only way we're going to do it, and by coming together as one community. I know we have very little time, but I'd like to allow Alex to ask a question that he had for our panelists, very briefly if we could.
So, I'm transgender as well, but I do not want to transition. How do I go about letting someone know, proving myself that I am transgender without transitioning?
You don't have to prove yourself. Don't ever say that. Seriously. And if anybody says, well, you're not trans, no, you're not trans, you're not on hormones. Who the hell are they to say that? Right? And then tell them to call me. So,
Yeah, when they call him, they can call me, and then they can call Aiden,
Right.
and then they can call Kyle.
You never, ever, ever have to prove yourself. Don't ever think you have to prove yourself. You don't have to prove yourself to us.
Yeah, it's
You don't have to prove yourself to anybody.
You
Right.
determine how you identify, not other people.
It's your life. You do what's comfortable for you, right? I even tell people when they're talking to their parents or their spouses, it's your life, right? Live your life for you. And I can tell you that mine and Susan's relationship is amazing now because she allowed me that space to be able to be myself. And she learned more about herself in the process. So it's amazing.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong way. It's
Yeah.
just your way.
Yeah, thank you.
Before you leave, if you didn't on your way in, take a look just outside this door. There is a quote from Albert Einstein. It is the single most important quote you will ever hear or know. I've heard different versions of it, and I use a different version of it. But it is, the world is a dangerous place, not because of the people who do evil, but because of the people that see evil being done and do nothing. That is the single most important quote you will ever memorize, and I use it all the time, and it's something that brings the point home, because that's what happened to these folks on the wall right here. And it's the only way we're going to stop it from happening again.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you all.
This is William, hopefully your favorite videographer from Two Hats Publishing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like it, please leave comments below, or like, follow, or subscribe to us and get notices of all our videos. We love it, even when you call.